What is up, my ninjas? Shinobi here with another Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls video for you guys, and we are continuing the series today, going over more classes, and today we have the Crusader Deadset himself. That's who we have here today. So, how's it going, man? How you doing? Great to have you.
I'm doing great, besides a small cold that I seem to have right now, but I should be fine.
Awesome. So before we get into everything, because we have a lot of information to go over, as you guys know from the previous videos that we've done. If you haven't seen those yet, covering the Wizard and Witch Doctor so far, definitely check those out. But like I said, we're covering the Crusader, and there is a lot of stuff to go over. There's a lot of different build variations, a lot of different starter build tips and tricks, and greater rifting stuff. We're going to get into a lot of stuff in this video, so sit back and relax, and we're going to get going with that. But however, everything that we talk about here is, as well as gameplay, are all going to be down below. The skill calculators, everything you need to know is going to be down below and also mentioned in this video. So this is Deadset's channel right here. Go over there, throw him a sub, say what's up to him, and he also has a Twitch channel as well. And he does the streaming thing here. He's been streaming for, you said, about since the beginning of Reaper of Souls, right?
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
I actually did YouTubing at first for maybe the first 3 months, and then I transitioned into streaming as well around the summertime. But yeah, basically for at least half a year now.
Awesome. Yeah, great, man. And but you've been playing Diablo 3 from the beginning?
Absolutely, yes. I've been playing since release.
Nice. All right, so we're going to get into all this stuff now, guys. I know you're eager and ready to go. We're going to start off just like we did in the previous video, going with the same kind of formation here. We're going to talk about a starter build. Now, these are all the skill calculators that Deadset has given to me here. And the first one here is the starter build for, I guess, what you're going to do as you're leveling up, and then when you get to 70, what you're going to do right off the bat. So go ahead and run me through the skills we have here and talk a little bit about the build.
Well, I would say that leveling and beginner-wise, the Hammers build is still a very effective way to get into Crusaders, even if it's not the most powerful of skills. Generally, cheaper skills like Blessed Hammer, Blessed Shield, or even Fist of Heavens, to some extent, make for better transitional skills until you get the gear to play with the costly spenders like Heaven's Fury and Condemn. Blessed Hammer with Burning Wrath is the one that I recommend here, though you could go for the Lightning variation as well, very easily. You just transition from Fire into Lightning depending on the gear that you get as you level up and as you start your level 70 play. So Blessed Hammers with Burning Wrath for the synergy with Akarat's Champion with Firestarter, which is a very powerful boost to your early damage. And it's going in circles, which is kind of wonky at first to get into, but it's actually a very efficient skill to play with. It's underrated in my opinion, especially in the early gearing stages. People tend to jump straight for the big spenders, and that's not exactly possible before you get your Archon piece and you start managing your Wrath more easily. So yeah, I definitely recommend starting with Blessed Hammer and having a bit of mobility through Steed Charge with Nightmare. This is why I picked this skill. I also picked Laws of Valor with Critical to boost your damage even further.
Yep.
Though, if you struggle with your Wrath management, I know it's going to be a bit hard at the beginning, going for a spec without the generator. You could switch out Laws of Valor with Critical for the Unstoppable Force Rune, which is easier on your Wrath management, I would say. And you protect yourself through Iron Skin with Steel Skin. I picked this skill in the place of Consecration, which was my choice for the beginner build in the past, because Consecration no longer procs the Firestarter, and it's just a nice skill to have to protect yourself. Early on, you won't have your permanent Akarat's Champion, so you can juggle your Iron Skin with your Akarats to basically survive.
Yeah, some of the things I'm noticing with this build here, so I do see some fire here, which is good for getting up there, and you go with the Akarat's Champion, which you get actually this rune at level 29. A lot of this stuff you get really, really early. You get your Blessed Hammer really early, 18. You get this at 29. You get your Steed Charge pretty quickly. So would you say that even using a build pre-70 like this would be completely fine for leveling up quickly in a new season here?
Absolutely. You might want to throw in, let's say, a Justice as a generator to synergize with your Blessed Hammers as you level, because stacking cooldown reduction during gearing stages, you know that you throw out gear very quickly. You go from one piece to the next at basically at the pace of a minute or even less. And I would say that Justice can make a fine generator for the build as you level up. Once you get to 70, it's actually just transition into a generatorless build, but I would recommend a very similar spec for leveling as well.
Yeah, awesome. And when you do get to level 70 for this build here and you are using it, what are some of the first items that you'd want to craft? You know, that if you were to find certain plans, which you will pretty quickly in the beginning of the season when you make new characters, you know, which one are you going to go for?
Your gambling goal is going to be account for sure, but as far as crafts go, and this is going to be easier for you because the plans are pretty frequent early on, you're going to want to craft Guilds and Captain Crimson.
Yeah.
Those are two very valuable craftable sets that are gonna boost your toughness, your damage output, and your cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction is the name of the game for Crusaders, and those two sets are very valuable for building up your Crusader in the early gearing stages. Also, I didn't mention this in the beginner video that I linked you, but Blackthorn, which is a very common set, as a lot of you might have discovered during your Diablo playtime, is also very useful for the early gearing stages. So you might want to mix in Guilds, Captain Crimson, and Blackthorn for an efficient early gearing build.
Yeah. But yeah, so you want to go for the Guilds as quick as possible. You want to go for the Crimson as quick as possible with the crafting there. The Icons is like one of the first things you want to gamble for. Going for like the pants, maybe the shoulders, gloves, boots type thing. You don't maybe staying away from the helmet because you can get the Leoric's crown. You know, and you're gonna have to roll against. You said earlier when we were chatting, you're gonna say that there's a lot of different chests that you can get. So try to stay away. Maybe leave the chest for a little bit later on. And another viable thing with that is that chests and pants require a lot of materials to re-roll. So if you're trying to get the right stats to make it something like a guaranteed upgrade there, you know, you have to take that in consideration too. People are going to be low on materials right away. So you know, definitely for that. And so we talked about the gambling. We talked about some of the items you want to craft right away. Now, what are some of the most important items to find first? When you just hit level 70?
When it comes to early gearing for Crusaders, of course you're going to spend all of your blood shards gambling for the set piece of a con, all 6 pieces, going through the order that we mentioned. But other than that, I would say gamble for shields. Shields are very cheap to gamble for and relatively easy to find as well. And they're going to be one of the pieces to kickstart your Crusader from. Basically, the shield that you get is gonna dictate which direction you're gonna take your Crusader in.
Exactly.
And you have several very viable shields to go for. For example, the Unrelenting Phalanx shield, which is, as some of you might know, the shield to go for with the Stampede Crusader.
The pony
of course,
build,
the Frider's Wrath for the Condemned Crusader, very powerful shield, which is no longer restricted to seasonal play. You're going to be able to find that in off-season and season, starting from this patch. And other shields as well. I would say Hell School is still a very viable and useful shield if you want to go for a Holy Shotgun setup. I'm sorry, my mistake. What was the name of the shield, though? It escapes my mind. Jacking Board. Yes, the Jacking Board is the Blessed Shield shield to get. And
yeah, so shields
definitely
are going to dictate that stuff for you there. It's going to be, you find a pony shield, you're going to want to go towards, pony build and all these kind of things. So I'm talking about these different builds because people might be a little confused right now. If maybe you're going to play Crusader for the first time in Season 2, we have some builds here. So the first one we're going to talk about is Condemn. And this is the build that you've linked to me here. And let's go ahead and talk about the Condemn build. What kind of items are going to be needed for it. You do use a lot of cooldown reduction, right? So you're going to need, kind of specify all the little details.
Sure. As a lot of you might have gathered already, the Crusader is very needy on cooldown reduction, and a lot of your pieces will have to have cooldown reduction. And I mean the gloves, the shoulders, your weapon even, and your shield, your belt with the Vigilante. Cooldown reduction is really, really necessary on Crusaders to reach the valuable 56% breakpoint to have permanent Akarat's champion. So this is a useful number to have in your mind. 56% in your sheet is gonna guarantee permanent Akarat's champion uptime. For the Condemn, you're gonna want at least 5 pieces of the Akan, potentially 6 in a best-in-slot gear setup, but 5 pieces for sure
With the Arena Royal Grandeur.
Exactly.
Which is another item you're going to want to get very quickly, right? That's just going to be helpful
Yes.
in multiple builds or just maybe just this build.
I would even say that even with the beginner build, you would do well to farm for the Ring of Royal Grandeur. Even then, it's going to be valuable. And as you transition into further builds, it's going to remain a valuable part of your setup. As we talked about a little bit before starting the discussion, the Ring of Royal Grandeur is also a piece that you want to have cooldown reduction on. So you gotta farm for a Ring of Royal Grandeur with either natural cooldown reduction or a natural socket, so you can roll either the attack speed or life on hit for whichever stat is missing. But your ideal Ring of Royal Grandeur has both a socket and cooldown reduction. And you're gonna complete the 5-piece of Akan with a Liori crown for the early gearing stages when you still don't have best-in-slot jewelry, and this is how you reach your 56 breakpoint.
Awesome. And so you, now with this build, it's all about the vacuum condemn. It's all about spamming those abilities, using Akarat's champion as much as possible, all the time. And so the whole play style behind the build is just kind of running into a big AoE group, pulling everything towards you, AoEing them down, and moving along, right? It's kind of the way it goes here.
Condemn is a very mobile setup for both Torment 6 purposes and Greater Rift. Condemn is basically being always on the move, crowd controlling the mobs by sucking them in towards you and just destroying them as you go. This is how the Condemn playstyle does, and it's what it does best, basically. Even in Greater Rifts, even in Torment 6, this is something that you have to teach yourself to always be on the move, and Vacuum will take care of the destruction by itself.
Yeah, awesome. And would you say, like, I know that lately with the 2.1.2, the density in those rifts has been increased by so much. Would you feel like an AoE spec like this is the dominant force now in the meta? Is it going to be, this is it, right? This is the go-to spec for all scenarios, T6, highest greater rifts you can possibly get to. Is this kind of the build you're looking for?
Yes, I would say in the Condemn versus Stampede debate, it's going in favor of Condemn at the moment. Stampede is still powerful and competitive, just more reliant on rift structure and favorable trash enemies. Condemn is superior at the rift clear because of the vacuum rune.
It's more of a solid build, like it's better most of the time.
Exactly, the crowd control makes the clears very smooth and the build is more pleasant to play with, I would say.
Now this, the Condemned build is obviously going to require the Blade of Prophecy, which is the Condemned weapon. That's what we're going to be looking for. It's also going to be reliant on the Condemned shield, which is, I always forget the name of it.
Frider's Wrath.
Yeah, so that's kind of what you're going for there. And so those two are going to really make this build a viable thing. Is there any way to actually do a Condemned build without either of those, or no, you just have to have those?
To be completely honest, I think both items in conjunction make the strength of the Condemn build. I wouldn't say either having only the Blade of Prophecy or the Condemn shield, you would have a powerful Condemn spec going for you. Unlike the Stampede, where the shield is basically the strong basis of the build, Condemn does require both the shield and the weapon in order to be truly effective.
Yeah.
So I would say save up your Condemned shield or save your Blade of Prophecy until you get both pieces and then enjoy the spec. Until then, you can still go for a very efficient and very powerful Stampede setup, or even still use your beginner setup, or even Holy Shotgun, depending on which items you get.
Yeah, so like with the condemned build, it's more of like it's a more gear dependent build, probably the most gear dependent build out of
Yes, it's
everything.
true.
So you're probably not going to get everything you need right away. You got to be patient. It's a very gear dependent class in general, so
Mhm.
you're going to have to spend some time and finally get all the stuff and get the right stats too. So it's not enough to just get, oh, I found a Blade of Prophecy. That means I can do this now. You got to get the cooldown reduction. You got to get the right stats. You know what I'm saying? So like that's kind of it's you got to be patient with it, and you might want to focus on some different type of builds first, like the starter build we talk about, or maybe possibly the next one we're going to talk about, and that is the Stampede build, aka the Pony build. So we
Yes.
have that right here. Let's go ahead and talk about it a little bit and how it kind of interacts and what you're going to do here and what's the requirements for a build like this.
Well, as always, the basis, the backbone of every worthy Crusader is going to be the Akan set. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the six pieces, the six-piece bonus in particular, whether you achieve it by wearing five pieces and the Ring of Royal Grandeur, or just go for the complete six-piece setup, is up to you. This complete six-piece setup and having permanent Akarat's champion will require perfect jewelry. That's a bit hard, as you might imagine, but it's achievable for sure.
Yeah.
And what I would say is also key for the build is the Unrelenting Phalanx Shield, which is, I would say, not that hard to gamble for,
Yeah, just
along with
one
the Prider's
individual
Wrath.
item. It costs 25 blood shards.
Exactly. It is
Yeah,
super, super easy to gamble for. Now, getting a perfect roll is, of course, going to take more time,
yeah,
but just beginning with the Stampede build is easier to do than beginning a Condemned build because of the shield being the key part of the build and basically unlocking the Stampede playstyle for you as soon as you get it.
yeah. And one thing to note with the Stampede build here is that Waller can be especially a pain in the butt for you.
It's true. It's true.
So you'd want to definitely get the Zolting Cool health potion, right, to
That is a
deal with
nice
that
little trick
Waller.
you can go for, yes,
Oh
of
yeah.
course.
Okay, so that's perfect. And this build, I personally love this build. I think it's awesome. You lock down your enemies. It's really great. And it has a lot of synergy with the strong arm bracers, which is something you would
Yes.
use in both of these builds or all
Yes,
of
the
these
strong arm
builds.
is a wonderful, wonderful piece of for Crusaders because both top tier builds can take advantage of the strong arm proc and is thus the preferred bracer for both builds. Of course, for Condemn, you're going to go for holy damage, but for the Stampede setup, you want to have physical damage there.
Yeah.
And I would say Phalanx excels at Elite Lockdown and the Rift Guardian Clear. With the increase of density in the new patch, the reason why Condemn shines so much is because of clearing trash so efficiently, but Phalanx with Stampede is still very powerful and will clear the Rift Guardian much quicker than the Condemn setup. So
Yeah.
I would say this is the strength of the Stampede setup.
I feel like in the beginning of season 2, you're going to see most people on the leaderboards be the Stampede build because you can get that shield kind of early on, and no matter what you're doing for a Crusader, you're going to be looking for a cons anyway. So I feel like in the beginning stages of the Greater Rifting, we're going to see a lot of the Stampede build. So this is something to definitely look out for, like a tier 2 spec for you. You have your starter build first, and then you'd probably jump into this pretty quickly unless you got lucky and got the Condemned Sword and shield.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the angle you're going to be going for, most likely, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that the Phalanx Stampede build is still a solid choice, and it's certainly easier to itemize around. What I can tell you about the build also is that actually, what do you want to talk about here in the Stampede setup?
The gear in the
Should I go over
Stampede
the build?
setup?
Yeah, sure.
So you would need the shield, obviously. Now
Yes,
for weapon, you're ideally going to look for a furnace, right?
that is true. That
And
is
you're going to
true.
want cooldown reduction on there?
Yes,
Okay.
the strength of the furnace, as always, is getting the up to 50% damage against elites as a
Yep.
free affix in the secondaries. This is amazing. Allows you to have both the 10% damage increase and the 10% CDR, which is obviously the best in slot roll for the build. However, since the furnace is a harder weapon to get, you can still substitute that with a physical polearm, namely the Heart Slaughter, and you're still going to enjoy a very efficient clear of Torment 6 and mid to high level of Greater Rifts as well. You're actually going to be more efficient against trash enemies when you use the Hard Slaughter compared to the Furnace, but of course, against Reef Guardians and against Elites, the Furnace is going to shine.
Exactly. Let's talk about this kind of alternative build we have here at the end for the build setup portion of this video. You had the support build here. Now this one you said is pretty easy to acquire. Most of it is crafted gear, and
Yes.
and you essentially you're not doing very much damage. You're like the tank of the group. You're the one that's locking everything down and allowing your I believe you said demon hunters, monks type thing to really do that damage and
Yes.
punish the monsters. So explain a little bit about this build here.
With the Support Crusader, you're basically the fourth piece of the puzzle in Greater Rifts, along with the Support Witch Doctor for Elite Lockdown and, for example, Double Demon Hunter for the DPS. With the Support Crusader in particular, you're going to be grouping up enemies. That's your primary role, grouping up enemies, blinding them with shield glare, and boosting the damage of your party by judging the enemies, giving additional crit chance for your entire party.
Yeah, and vacuuming them in there, blinding them, giving a 20% damage increase for 4
Yes.
seconds, because you have so much cooldown reduction with the crimsons and all that stuff, the items that you acquire. You can pretty much just use everything as much as possible, right?
Exactly. Crafted sets like Borns and Captain Crimson, of course Leoric's Crown is going to be very helpful for the build, but basically even without the power of the Akan set, you pretty much have permanent Akarat's Champion in this setup as well, and you also have absolute permanent uptime of your Judgments, your Shield Glares, your Condemn. Laws of Hope is going to be off of cooldown for pretty much the entirety of any fight that has any meaning to the party. And you actually have an interesting variation in the low section. You can either go for Laws of Valor with critical, or go for the new recommendation, which is Laws of Hope with Hopeful Cry, which drops health globes basically for your party, which is extremely valuable for demon hunters, as their newfound thirst for hatred is going to be fueled by Laws of Hope with Hopeful Cry.
Yeah, awesome. So would you say from these 3 sets that you gave me here, you said it was a 56% sheet cooldown reduction for Condemn, right?
Yes, for both Stampede and Condemn.
Same for Stampede?
Yeah, 56% cooldown reduction guarantees you permanent uptime of Akarat's Champion
Would you want to
with
use
the Akan set.
Would you want to use a con? I mean, not con. Would you want to use the Gogok or anything with any of these, or do you not need it? Or
I would use the Gogok of Swiftness for the support build for sure. You want to
Okay.
guarantee that you have permanent uptime of everything whenever it's needed. It's a very spammy setup. I would actually equate it to the old Critical Mass Wizard setups, which spammed all the buttons at the same time. This build plays very similarly to this. The support does spam all of his skills all of the time. But yeah, for the Akan setups, 56 sheet CDR with the 6-piece bonus is going to guarantee you permanent uptime of Akarat's Champion.
Awesome. Great. Let's talk about a little bit of alternative weapons here. Now, when you're first starting off, and you get like up there, some of the weapons that if you don't get lucky enough to find Blade of Prophecy or Furnace or anything like that, we do have the Hard Slaughter, like you mentioned earlier, that's good for the Stampede build, because
Absolutely.
you are a physical build, so that's a viable option off the bat, right? But ideally you'd want the Furnace.
Yes, that is true.
That's your second best in slot, right?
Yes.
And then we also have Maximus, which could be useful. Probably would you use the Maximus in that starter build there, or with the fire build that you had there, if you got it up pretty quickly?
Yes, I would say a Maximus would be very good for a beginner setup with fire damage. Either the Maximus or the Schaefer's Hammer for the variations of the Blessed Hammer builds. They're both very viable as you start your Crusader.
Good. Let's get into some Greater Rift tips now. So we talked about a little bit how Condemn is kind of the way to go on those higher, greater rifts. So let's imagine you have your Condemn, everything, you're pushing for those high tiers. What are some of the best Rift Guardians to go against? What are some of the worst? Because, you know, Condemn is, that's the toughest part of Condemn, right? Everything leading up to the
Exactly.
Rift Guardian is pretty easy. It's all about giving yourself enough time to deal with the Rift Guardian because you don't have the crazy damage like a Pet Witch Doctor or like a
Exactly.
Demon Hunter on the single target. So ideally, you probably want to go for like Stone Singer, right? And then you
Yes, the
said,
Stone Singer Dream.
and the other two would be, what are some good ones?
I would say that I just want to make a side note. Stampede is a little less pretentious for Rift Guardians. It's efficient for that same reason. It can clear the Rift Guardian faster than Condemn, and you don't need to get very specific Rift Guardians. You can stay at a safe range and crowd control
Yeah,
pretty
just
much
lock
constantly.
down. Yeah,
This is the strength of that build.
yeah,
However, for Condemn, clearing the Rift faster is basically the reason why people go for Condemn now. And unfortunately, it does hit a significant stopgap at the end. Of course, the Stone Singer Dream is
yeah,
the best Rift Guardian you could possibly go for.
yeah. Much
However,
like most classes.
you can still clear, you're gonna have the most, you will take the most benefit out of Rift Guardians that spawn ads for you.
Yeah,
Basically, your ideal Rift Guardian spawns at least two more ads. And examples of this would be, let's say, the Crusader King, which is basically the Skeleton King clone.
yeah.
Gom, if you have Mara's Kaleidoscope for poison immunity, is going to be a very easy tank and spank type of clear. And also, you're going to have an easy time against something like the Binder, which is the Spider Queen clone, basically,
She
because you
spawns
can
those
position
spiders and
yourself.
yeah.
Yes, she does spawn spiders, and you can position yourself around your follower in such a way that her poison attack does not even reach you. You can just stand right behind him. Her poison attack will only hit your follower, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's a clever little way you can go around
Yeah,
the
it's a good idea. You know, the Rift Guardians,
There's Rift Guardian.
the melee classes have a tough time with the Rift Guardians,
It's
especially
true.
on those
It's true.
higher tiers. You get the Barb, you have the Crusader, they have a tough time because you know there's certain elementals that can just really mess you up. So some of the worst ones would be like Choker, the tentacle guy that shoots those green
Yes.
beams at you. You could try to make it a little bit better by standing behind that the Templar, like you were talking about.
Yes, yes, it's
You also
true.
have Rhyme, but for him, I feel like you can kind of, or him or her, I feel like you could move around a little bit more.
It's true.
It's going
You
to
can
slow down
kite
your
him
damage,
towards
though.
places, yes. You can kite him towards places where the circles are not active on the ground and still continue to damage him. But it's still a very tough fight. I would say Rhyme, Raziel, Choker, guys like this that are pure single target are very, very hard for Condemn. And also they're highly damaging at close range, which is, of course, where you'll have to stand in order for your Condemns to hit the Rift Guardian. So
Yeah.
I would honestly say against these Rift Guardians, it's pretty much hit escape and leave game.
Yeah, so in summary here, AoE is the key. It's going to fuel your condemns over and over again, and you're going to be able to do more
Yes.
sustained damage for longer periods of time. So getting, the time up until the Rift Guardian is very, very important. And on the Rift Guardian, you're mainly looking for ones that spawn ads to help you out there. If
Exactly.
if you do, like you said, if you do get some of those ones that we mentioned before, it might be just better to leave unless you got a good 12 minutes. And even still, you're probably just going to die on those really high tiers. So
It's true.
there is the RNG factor there. But yeah, that's definitely the key. And the very last thing I want to talk about here in the video is that the new legendary gems and the new bombardment belt. So would you say that the new bombardment belt that drops a big comet down, bombardment drops down every so often? I think it's like every few, like 4 seconds or 6 seconds or something. Would you say that's going to actually play a role in season 2, or is the Crusader going to be the exact same as it was in season 1?
Honestly, I would only ever try to fit in that new belt with a very, very specific, extremely perfect jewelry. In fact, this would require you to have cooldown reduction everywhere, including the amulet, and this requires a perfect elemental damage, double crit stats, cooldown reduction, and socket flavor of time. This is
Yeah.
an insane requirement.
Because you're going to
in
be
my
getting rid
humble
of the
opinion.
vigilante belt, right?
Exactly,
So it
exactly.
really, and also by switching out one of your damage multipliers in your amulet, you're going to be losing a lot of damage. So is that really
Yes.
worth it for, bombardment? We don't really
Not
know
really.
yet. We
Only with
don't,
the flavor
so
of time. Only the
yeah.
flavor of time can actually has a chance to provide you with the DPS and an open slot for a belt. And I would honestly say that an entire season is not enough time to realistically hope for that belt and that particular amulet. Honestly, the bombardments is a very fun skill, but the long cooldown, the RNG element, it drops where it pleases, basically. Kind of kills it for me. I don't think
Yeah.
this will be part of any best in slot setup.
Okay.
It will be mostly a curiosity piece that you can fit into a fun build or something like that.
And the new legendary gems, they're very defensive gems. Do you feel like they will play a role at all for the Crusader, or do you feel like the Crusader's already pretty tanky enough, doesn't really need that, and you should just focus on your standard builds?
Interestingly, I would say that the new legendary gems will play some role into the Roland setup, which is our alternative set, and this set does suffer from survivability problems, which can be alleviated to a certain extent with the new legendary gems. For the Akan setups, though, I don't see them being a part because basically the conclusion that every Crusader comes to is that you run out of damage before you run out of toughness in Greater
Yeah.
Rifts. It's more about having as many sources of damage as you possibly can through the legendary gems instead of trying to compensate for some lack of toughness. We're actually extremely durable. We have 3 lives to play with pretty
Yeah.
much any good setup for the Crusader, and you can usually survive things no matter how dire they are. The issue pretty much always comes down to clearing fast enough.
Would you say that ideally, in the perfect world, in the future, an improvement on the Crusader you'd like to see from Blizzard would maybe be, a little bit helping with the single target more with some of these specs, or they're going to be revamping the other sets later on. So, would you say that that's something that the Crusader needs pretty desperately? Is more single target damage?
I would say that for the condemned setup in particular, they could make a very simple quality of life change and make it like the Holy Shotgun weapon, which basically has the triple cast guaranteed. The Blade of Prophecy requires multiple targets to be present in order to triple the cast of Condemn. However, the Crusader already has a weapon in his repertoire that triples the cast with 0 requirements, and that is the Fate of the Fel for the Holy Shotgun weapon. So if they simply take the same type of property and apply it to the Blade of Prophecy for Condemn, the single target damage will improve immensely. Now,
Yeah.
whether this should be the way or there should be some additional item to include in the build to improve the single target, it's up to them. For Stampede, I could think of a few ways to improve that, to be honest. I definitely would like to see some quality of life improvements to Stampede, make the horses pass over small obstacles on the ground instead of crashing in them, and make them always go in a straight line instead of sometimes fanning out in an
Or
arc.
maybe make them like kind of like ghost horses, so they kind of like go through walls or something. That would be pretty cool. You could stand behind a wall, throw your horses in there, and then the monsters would run around, and then you wouldn't have to really deal with Waller and these annoying things like that.
It's
That could
true,
help out a
most
lot.
Yes, most projectiles in the game have no issue with passing over small obstacles or
Yeah.
small curves, whereas the horses simply crash into them and sometimes you lose half of your damage or even more. And this is kind of killing the build. You require very specific rift set layouts on the map and monster types to be advantageous to you and clear efficiently with Stampede. And people are just going to go for the easier setup, vacuum all day long and hope for favorable Rift Guardians.
Yeah, well, that's I think that's gonna do it for us today, though, guys. A lot of information in here because there's so much with the Crusader. It's not simply just go this and you're fine. You know, there are a lot of options. There's a lot of things you can do for your starter builds. There's a lot of things you can do in general. But the main objective is getting Neticons, getting those specific build intensive items like the pony build shield, like the blade of prophecy, these things like that. So I hope you guys did learn a good bit about the Crusader here and give you a little bit of an advantage coming into Season 2. I do want to thank you, Deadset, for hanging out here, man. It was definitely great to gain some knowledge on the Crusader, some things that I didn't know, and you know, and something hopefully the viewers didn't know. So once again, thanks a lot for coming and do this with us.
Absolute pleasure, man. Anytime.
Like I said, guys, you can check out Deadset in the links all down below, and even his builds and everything. He makes very good instructional guides, yeah, definitely going to see more of him in the future, not only on Twitch, but also on YouTube, and, you know, in the leaderboard competitive scene and everything like that. But that'll do it for today. My name is Shinobi, and until next time, thanks for watching.